What's good, people? It's about that time to randomly relate, reverse rants, no hate. So, one of the family members asked me to make a video about do I think this generation is as skilled as the 70s, 80s, and 90s? Okay. To answer that, yes and no. Every era of time that you just said, 70s, 80s, 90s, we didn't have everybody at the same time. Certain guys, while they was on the uprise, other guys was on the decline, and so forth and so on. So even if they were fighting at the same time, you got different weight classes, got different situations going on. I don't think this current crop of heavyweights is as skilled as the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Not all of them. Not all of them. I think Tyson Fury and AJ could have fought in any era. Because I think that they both have the ability to adjust and adapt to their opponents. I think Andy Ruiz could have did good. I think Wilder would have struggled. I think he would have struggled. I think he would have struggled because when you only have one real weapon in your arsenal and you fighting guys that can actually fight and guys that will fight you, they're not going to quit. They're just going to keep going. It's different. I think he would have struggled in any of those eras. Excuse me. And I'm talking, when you talking about top 10 fighters, okay, let's just say top 10 fighters. Because you got to understand too, right? Every era, there was never an era of fighting that I watched, even stuff that was way before my time that I watched and we were sitting, there's no era of time where everybody was just an excellent fighter. That's bullshit. Now, I can tell you this right now. People will protect their era and say, oh no, my era was better. Oh, this era would have beat this era. This era would have beat that era. I think guys like Floyd Mayweather and Pacquiao could have made it in any era. I think Canelo could have made it in any era. Now, when I say that, let me explain something too. Even if there's guys that would have beaten Canelo or let's just say any of these guys would have lost to anybody, I think these guys would have held their own, and I think they would have beat a lot of these guys from the past as well. So yeah, every era of time, every era. Jack Johnson fought a heavyweight champion that was 160 pounds. Actually 155 pounds that wore platform shoes to make him taller. And he actually dropped Jack Johnson in one of their fights. Now, Jack Johnson was like 205, 210. And he still got dropped by a little guy. Skills increase as time goes on. Fighters get sharper, they get smarter, they get wiser. The strengthening and conditioning, all that stuff is different. They didn't have those things back then. But, in all honesty, the sharpest era of heavyweights, for me, it depends on how I feel as far as, I can't say I like one era more so much, but to be honest with you, if I had to pick to say what era I actually like more, and I'm talking overall fighters, not just the few top fighters, I find myself more intrigued watching the Holyfields, the Bulls, the Lennox Lewis's, Ray Mercer's, Michael Moore's. Like, I feel myself more intrigued watching that era of heavyweight boxing. Ali, is the same exact size as Usyk. Height and reach, weight. People saying that Usyk is too small for these heavyweights, but they think Ali could have beat all of them. Now, Ali was a different fighter than Usyk. It was similar, and they moved a lot. Usyk don't have that kind of hand speed. The reflexes Ali had, there was two different type of fighters. So how do you think that Ali could have did it, but you don't think Usyk could have? Because he's too small. See, this is what I'm saying. And I've heard people say Ali would have killed, he'd have killed Anthony Joshua. He'd have killed, Tyson Fury. I tell people this all the time. I don't really care about the comparisons. We can all give our opinion on what we think would have happened. Excuse me. But let me say, in terms of skill, no, I don't think these heavyweights are as skilled. I don't think the welterweight division overall is as skilled. I don't see anybody right now and the welterweight division that I think would have beat Floyd Mayweather. Would have beat Pernell Whitaker. Um, I don't see any of these guys beating Oscar De La Hoya. You understand what I'm saying? I just don't see it. Um, Now, a guy like Shane Mosley, Terrence Crawford probably would have outboxed Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley had always had a problem with boxers. He didn't have a problem with punchers. See, this is what I'm saying. It's not an era thing so much for me. It's more of the fighters of the era. It's not a package deal, man. There's fighters from way back. Look, one of a fighter who I feel like never gets a lot of talk. People don't really talk about him is Salvador Sanchez. I thought he was nice. Salvador Sanchez could fight. How many times do you hear people talk about Salvador Sanchez? You know what I'm saying? So it's not about that. Nobody was talking about Pernell Whitaker just till he died a few years ago. And then all of a sudden they started, Pernell would have beat this guy and that guy. Look, so no, right now, the current situation in boxing, I think these guys are flashy. These guys have more say-so over their careers. It was easier to put fights together back in the day. Guys had to fight more because the money wasn't nearly in like what it is now. And I'm not talking so much the Holyfield Tyson era. I'm talking the Ali era and back, really more so back. But yeah, guys fought more. It was easy to put the top fighters together. You know what I'm saying? And the more promoters you get, with all these sanctioning bodies making all these different belts, it's going to be more difficult. They're not making, the WBC don't want to make a belt, okay? So the WBA champion can come up and snatch their, beat their fighter. Now he has both of them, and he's not really, like with people like this, like Mauricio Suleiman is the president of the WBC. Do you think that he wants somebody who's been, just say, this guy been a WBA champion forever, right? He come and beat your franchise, take his title. You think that Mauricio Suleiman wants that, and all these guys that the presidents of these different sanctioning bodies? No, they don't want that. That's why they make all this sanctioning. You're paying sanctioning fees for these titles, and also, they have more champions that they can say, oh, he's a champion, he's a champion, he's a champion, and it's like there's just too many belts going around for these guys. Where, like I said, when guys start to become millionaires, like I said before in a previous video. This guy might have $80 million. This guy might got $8 million. Guess what? He's still a millionaire. And he's like, I got this $8 million, and I didn't have to even fight the best dudes over there to get it. So guess what? I ain't got nothing to prove to y'all. I'm just as good as you are. I'm a millionaire too. I got a belt too. There's no urge. Now, from what I'm hearing, Caleb Plant and Canelo fight is supposed to be back on. And if I'm correct, somewhere in November or something like that. Whatever. I just don't think overall, when you package fighters up, like when you say 70s, 80s, 90s, it's not like 10-year stretch versus 10-year stretch. Because some fighters like Ali fought from the 60s all the way up to the early 80s. You understand what I'm saying? So you gotta, excuse me, it's always certain fighters. But there's fighters, yeah, now that I think could have fought, in any era. Yeah. Yeah. But overall, I think these guys, and the fights were more action-packed, more overall back in the day. I have not seen, the closest I've seen to a Riddick Bowe versus Holyfield type thing was Klitschko and Anthony Joshua. With two great fighters went in there and fought and was damaging each other, was getting it in, and it was a great fight. And Holyfield and Bowe did it 3 times. So, yeah, I feel like the fights were more action-packed. The fighters, of course, you want your money. All right, you want your money, of course. I think those guys appreciated boxing more, and one of the other differences as well is the fighters back in the day studied tapes of the fighters before them. So they looking at what can I add to my game that I learned from this guy. This generation don't do that. I even heard Tank Davis say he never saw Mike Tyson fight, but he heard Mike used to knock everybody out and stuff like that. And the Adrian Broners and all them, they know who these guys are because they see their faces now. But as far as watching their fights and studying who, they don't even know what these guys, their history. Deontay Wilder spoke about Mike Tyson, and he was talking like he didn't even really, aside from the guys that's still around now that show their face on social media and you get, talk about these things, he wasn't really studying Mike Tyson's style and watching his opponents and understanding fights that Mike Tyson had in his skills level, because that's why he was even saying in that car ride, who did Mike Tyson beat? You know, look at his resume. Mike ain't beat nobody. You know, they don't study these guys. Larry Holmes' era, in all honesty, suffered, and that's what they underrated Larry Holmes, because they didn't see Tony Tucker, Quick Tiller's Bone Crusher Smith, you know, uh, 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 um, you know, who else you had? Tim Witherspoon and Michael Dokes. They didn't see those guys. They didn't see them the way they saw Ali, Frazier, or Sonny Liston or George Foreman. I never was crazy about Ken Norton or Ernie Shavers, but other people talk like, yo, yeah, Ernie Shavers had knockout power in both hands, but he had a glass jaw, and pretty much he was easy to hit. You know, Ken Norton showed he had a problem fighting against punches. I mean, he got destroyed in 1 round by Ernie Shavers, got destroyed in 2 rounds by Foreman. You know what I'm saying? We never got to see Shavers and Foreman fight. So there are fights that we never got to see. We never got to see Larry Holmes versus Joe Frazier. You know what I'm saying? You never seen Norton versus Frazier. You know what I mean? We never got to see Roy Jones versus Steve Collins, or a prime Roy and prime Kawasaki. We never got to see, you know, a Roy Jones versus a Nigel Benn. You know, yeah, I mean, so it's a lot of things. We never got to see Pryor versus Hearns as a pro. We saw them fighting the amateurs. We never got to see Pryor versus Leonard. You know, we never got to see a Marvin Hagler versus a James Toney. You know, he fought the Beast Mugabe. He didn't fight Mike McCallum like this. There's guys that, you know, there's like a, you know, people always say everybody fought everybody. No, it's not true. There was a lot of fighters, and there was a lot of fights we didn't get to see. A lot of fights that we didn't get to see. If you sit back and go back, I've done this. I'll sit there and research, and you sit there and you like, yeah, there's a lot of fights we didn't see. You know, we never got to see Julian Jackson, you know, versus what's my man? I wanted to see him and James Toney fight. I wanted to see Julian Jackson. I'm like, you know, when Sugar Ray Leonard fought Donnie Lalonde. Donnie had a title, and Sugar Ray took his title. Donnie Lalonde was a guy, people didn't really look at him like, yo, he's that guy. Leonard still won. He fought Terry Norris. He lost to Terry Norris. You understand what I'm saying? Marvin Hagler retired after the Leonard loss. And basically, he you know, he didn't fight a Julian Jackson. There's guys that were still around. You know, there's guys that were still around that these guys could have fought. They didn't. You know, what I feel is like this: when you become an older fighter, to where you just don't have it anymore, and the guy want to fight you because he think he's gonna get some shine by beating you. You know, Trevor Berbick beating Ali. I'm not gonna knock Trevor for taking the fight. I knock Ali's people for allowing him to fight. I knock his people for not finding a way to build money up to help Ali to where Ali would be well taken care of, to raise some kind of money and do something at that point. Because Ali, people think Ali's last fight was against Holmes, but it wasn't. It was Trevor Berbick. Trevor Berbick got his title, and was when not Ali's title, he wound up becoming a champion later. And so, you know, Ali was completely done. When he fought Holmes, you saw that. So afterwards, he fought Trevor Berbick, same thing. He was done. And they said Ali was already showing signs of Parkinson's, that he actually failed his test before he fought Holmes, but they let him fight anyway. You know, so there's a lot of stuff that you got to factor in, and you look, and I think people just over-exaggerate about how great certain guys was. There was guys who never won a title back in the day. They considered them great because of their skill display and who they fought. At the same time, if a guy's fighting guys now and they're losing, but they're willing to fight, they don't get that same praise. You see what I'm saying? To sum things up about skills, let me say this. There's a kickboxer back in the day named Ernesto Hoost. Okay? Ernesto Hoost was highly decorated as one of the best kickboxers ever. He fought a guy named Brian Sapp. Big, giant, 350-pound actor. Can't fight, can't take body shots. Just have power and size, right? Excuse me. God damn, dry cough. Bear with me, people. Okay, so what happened was this. Ernesto Hoos, on an interview, he said, Brian Sapp is a disgrace. He can't fight. He's just big. He doesn't do the sport any justice. And I'm feeling like, so then you shouldn't have a problem beating him. Because if he's just big, if you've ever trained any type of martial arts, any type of discipline, boxing as well, okay, you learn. Size is not everything. There's a way to nullify it. Now, some fights are just a mismatch. Let's just be real, okay? But Ernesto Hoos, if you listen to him talk, and you listen how they talked about him, here's the thing. Brian Sapp beat him twice. And the rematch, he beat him even worse. That Ernesto Hoos, there was nobody else that Brian Sapp fought that was on the level of praise that Ernesto Hoos was, an accomplishment. So therefore, if Ernesto Hoos never fought Brian Sapp, and Brian Sapp fought all those other guys that he fought, you know what people would have said? No way in hell would a guy like Brian Sapp beat Ernesto Hoos. That guy was way too skilled. Okay? So my thing is, a lot of times we over-exaggerate how good someone is because we're watching them do something against certain people. But now here you are against a guy that's just huge but can't fight. And you couldn't find the strategy to beat him. You see what I mean? So we have a tendency to give people more props and praise than what they're actually capable of doing. So that's why I say you can't watch one guy beat one guy and think he's automatically going to beat this guy. Okay. In MMA, Matt Hughes. I remember when Royce Gracie was saying his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu could beat any style. Any style. When I knew he was fighting Matt Hughes, I said, nah, Matt gonna destroy him, man. In my opinion, I don't see him doing nothing. He's not strong enough to beat Matt. Excuse me. People said, what? Yo, he beat Ken Shamrock and Dan B7. Yeah, but those guys were not skilled. These were guys that were like bouncers and shit, whatever. And at some point, they started learning some type of MMA. These wasn't guys. They wasn't like from the cradle with this shit. And no, they wasn't that skilled like that. It was a whole different level. So you saw the skill level in MMA start to increase in guys that was doing some type of discipline from the time they were kids versus, okay, I'm 28 now, let me learn some takedowns and holds and shit like that and mix it in with my street fighting, because that's what those type of guys were. So back then, that's when I really didn't like the UFC too much. They would wear karate gi, whatever, clothes, whatever they wanted to wear, they would wear it. They would pull hair, they would hold clothes, and all this type of shit. And I'm like, I just, it didn't feel like a sport to me. It just felt like a bunch of street dudes that they brought in, and you know, like them Van Damme movies, how they got guys breaking stuff on their head and biting through nunchucks and all that kind of crazy stuff. So when they fought, I felt like Royce Gracie was outdated. Not only did he not fight in 10 years at that point, but that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I just didn't see it enough, you know, for them to beat Matt Hughes. And when he fought Matt Hughes, he got destroyed. He had no answers for nothing Matt Hughes did. So again, if they never fought because of Royce Gracie's legend, people would have been saying, oh, hell no, Royce Gracie was undefeated. Nah, hell no. And Royce Gracie was too skilled. Nah, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was invincible. Bernard Hopkins, when he beat Felix Trinidad, people were saying Bernard Hopkins was old. He was 37 when he fought Trinidad. People was calling him old. Who the fuck is this dude? It was still a lot of people that didn't even know who Bernard Hopkins was at that point. That was the fight that put him on the map. Because he had fought Roy Jones and lost to Roy Jones some years earlier. Okay, but people was, this motherfucker, because Trinidad was the hot ticket at that time. If they never fought each other, to this very day, you wouldn't be able to convince people that he would have beat Trinidad. Let's say that fight was supposed to happen and then it didn't happen. Nah, hell no, Trinidad would have beat him. That's what people would have told you. But when he got in the ring and fought, you saw what happened. First excuse, oh man, no, but Trinidad really a welterweight. Oh, stop. That's not what you were saying before they fought. Stop. His weight ain't had nothing to do with it. And we all know that there's a lot of fighters that fight much smaller than their actual weight class so they can have advantage in strength and size. So everything that you got to factor in about a fighter, to me, like I said, it's not a package deal. It's the fighters themselves. Certain fighters are unique and they stand out, in their current generation to where they get more liked than other fighters. Now, if they're beating their competitors, then you got to give them more props. But a lot of fights that we didn't get, we don't know. Maybe certain guys would have beat other guys. What if Terry Norris didn't fight Ray Leonard? And people would have been saying Ray Leonard wouldn't beat Terry Norris. No, they wouldn't have said that. Because I remember before that fight, me being the only kid in the room, people trying to tell me, nah, you don't know yet. When you get older, you will see. Ray Leonard gonna school that boy. Ray Leonard got too much experience, too much skill. Ray Leonard done fought Hagler. He done fought Hines. He done did this kid. He ain't did nothing yet. I mean, he's a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. But he copied from Ray Leonard. See, he learned from Ray Leonard. Yada, yada. All this so-called knowledge that they give me. All this polishing gems and jewels up. And Ray Leonard got the shit beat out of him. And when it was all said and done, these same people that were sitting here trying to school the young kid, and me at the time, man, if Ray Leonard was in his prime, he'd have did this and this. And I started laughing. Give me my money. You bet me $5 that you say he was so. I want my money from all of y'all, right? I was the only kid in the room. All the adults telling me Terry Norris didn't have a chance of beating Ray Leonard. That's what they were saying before the fight. After the fight, oh, Ray Leonard not the same. Oh, he was in his. Stop. I don't want to hear that shit, man. That's why I always say, just be real and make predictions if you're going to do it off of the skills that you see, not what you feel in here. Because this controls this to make you sit here and be biased, and then you make excuses when the outcome is different. So, in all honesty, I put it to you like this. Look at everything that changed. Look at when they played basketball back in the 60s and 50s when they would sit there bouncing the ball in a complete circle because they didn't have that handle to go between the legs, cross over behind it. They didn't have all that. Them teams would get smoked right now. That was you talk about the beginning of something. So through time, heart and determination. Look at Ali. Ali fought Frazier and said, man, it's the closest I ever came to dying. And you see Ali in that tire, but he's still throwing them punches. Still, like, he just won't stop. He just won't stop punching. And when Ali got to the point where he couldn't dance like he used to, Ali knew, okay, I can stand and fight if I need to. And you know what? I ain't scared to get hit either. And Ali showed a solid chin. So if you dropped Ali, you caught him hard or you caught him right. But Ali was never knocked out. And even against Holmes, the fight was stopped. He didn't do anything. He didn't commit anything. He was done. He was just trying to survive, standing there getting punished. And, that was one of them things. It was like, come on, man, stop this fight. Ali didn't have it anymore. So you can't live off what somebody did in the past when they was capable of doing it versus now when they're not capable. Overall, nah. I think fighters are more, they're flashy. They got attitude. They're cocky. I don't think this generation of fighters right now is as skilled. No, I don't. As the 90s, 80s, and 70s. Certain fighters, yes. Overall majority, no. But every era, there's fighters who I feel like could have made it in any era, and there's fighters from other eras that couldn't have made it in this era. Now, I'm not talking about the very top guys. You know what I'm saying? Because let's not act like every guy was a top guy. That's no. We've seen fights. If you watch, they got fights right here on YouTube where the fights was like 140 something rounds. 40 something rounds, and they did most of this. One in circles, doing this shit right here. Wasn't a lot of action. A whole lot of nothing happening. A lot of holding, clinching, throw a punch, hold, hitting on all that type of shit. Wasn't action-packed fights. And if those fights were action-packed and was something to see, they'd be showing it a whole lot more, and they'd be breaking it down and making a big deal out of it. And they would be doing TV specials on it, not just YouTube videos. So videos that you see clips of, and they're starting to colorize and do the 60 frames per second with a lot of these videos now, which is cool because you get to see it better. Because in black and white, and with the whatever the frames were then, they looked like they was moving fast forward. Just like they was, you know, it was crazy. But yeah, this current crop of fighters we have, man. Like I said, I named certain fighters who I think would have made it in any era, plain and simple. But as far as the product of boxing itself, I don't think it's as exciting as it used to be. Not to me, it's not. I'm not as excited about it. Fighters didn't make excuses to not fight each other like that back in the days. Um, like I said, it was easy to put fights on. You wasn't paying a shitload of money. We got to see, Ali versus Spinks. We got to see Leonard versus Hearns. All these different fighters right here on Channel 7, Wild World of Sports, ABC. You know, it's a lot that come with this shit now. So it's not just the fighters, understand it. It's the business itself. It's a money-making machine. You know what I'm saying? And because of that, there's a lot of headaches in boxing because you can't get the fights you want to see. When you hear a fight's going to happen and you start, okay, yeah, then it's like, what happened? No fight. And yeah, I find myself watching fights in general, but not any particular era of time. But I gotta say, with the heavyweights, and for y'all that don't know, Terry Norris, he was that guy for me. I watched him and it's like, yeah, his skills was crazy. Excuse me. Terry just had a tendency to get careless at times, man, and get a fight away. Because I mean, that dude, skill for skill, that dude was as good as anybody. Terry was a beast, man. But like I said, his mistakes that he would make, carelessness, cost him several fights. And he's another fighter that wound up getting brain damage early. Mildred Taylor's another one, started getting brain damage early. Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I mean, there's a fight named Kevin Pompey. Hardly anybody remember who he is. He never was a superstar or anything, but he was a good fighter that fought hard and came up a little short in the big fights, but he was always a solid fighter. Prince Charles Williams, another guy, solid guy. Prince Charles Williams is a guy that he could have fought back in the day, and they would have gave him a lot of praise with the skill set that he had. You understand what I'm saying? Because he reminded me of a lot of guys from back in the day. Like yeah, he fight like them old timers. And excuse me, there was people on that level. So if Prince Charles Williams didn't get the praise that the guys before him got, you understand that Ezra Charles and all those guys, think about what I'm saying. It's people's opinion on who they think would have beat who and who is better. And that's what it is. So my opinion is boxing is not as interesting as it used to be overall. And I think the difference is not, it is a lack of skill, basic fundamentals. These guys like to be flashy. Most of them don't even work behind the jab. Roy Jones had a jab, he just didn't use it all the time. They want to be flashy. They're more focused on the money, buying cars and mansions and all that, than they are in terms of building up legacy. So even if they're looking at a fighter guy, yeah, I fight that motherfucker. Yeah, I fight him. I don't care. It's more so of ego, not so much legacy with these guys. Different mentality in the game, man. Completely different mentality now. So you're going to get change. And like I said, depending on what mood I'm in determines what I watch. But in all honesty, for me to pick an era, I would have to say the 90s in terms of what I find myself watching more of overall every division versus way back when. Because way back when, I study, as far as studying, I watch all of it. But as far as what I feel like, yeah, let me watch such and such versus such and such, it's the same things. If it's I watch the Ezra Charleses, I watch Ali, Frazier, Foreman, all these. I watch all those guys. Oscar Bonavena, I watch Kid Gavilan, Carmine Basili. I watch all those motherfuckers, man. I don't, you know what I'm saying? To study and observe styles and all, I watch all of it. But for me, as far as what I've been more intrigued with watching, multiple weight classes, and just watching it, I gotta go with the 90s. I really gotta go with the 90s overall. And it's not about a favorite so much. It's just that's what like what I find myself like when I watch the Ali era. I'm mostly watching Ali. I watch Henry Cooper, all these guys. I watch all of them. I watch the different weight classes. But a lot of those fights, overall, I find myself more intrigued with the heavyweights in those eras. You see what I'm saying? The 90's, I'm watching pretty much everybody. The 80's as well. You know what I'm saying? But overall, for me, is the 90's. Because aside, like, really the heavies, the 80's heavyweights, if you going to go from Holmes to Tyson, okay. And watching the Ray Leonards, the Durans, the Benitez's, Hagels, all these guys, you know, watching all of them, Salvador Sanchez, watching all of these dudes, man. When it comes to the 90's, I find myself watching multiple weight classes and more consistent, like being more intrigued by it. So the skill level goes up and it gets to a point where, okay, it's here. This generation is not surpassing that shit. And as far as I'm concerned, the last of the legendary fighters, where I'm talking pound for pound greats, accomplishment wise, I know they're going to put Canelo in there. And Canelo is a solid fighter. Okay, he is an elite fighter. Even with the fighters that you think he lost fights to, okay, these were other elite fighters. So it's not like he was losing to guys that wasn't shit. You understand what I'm saying? Or having fights with guys that people felt like he lost to guys that wasn't shit. So I'm not going to knock him based on a judge's decision if you feel like he lost. But I'm going to say as far as legendary fighters, because if you look at Floyd's resume, see, people can talk all that shit, oh, he handpicked guys, and Floyd put the work in first. Floyd put that work in. And Floyd, when he was going under the name Pretty Boy Floyd, you watch him then versus when he got older and his body started breaking down. And you see Floyd was that dude, and he still was that guy. Because even with the things people were saying about him, he was still beating these guys. So all this, he fought guys and they were too old, or he fought guys and they were too young. He was a massive manipulator, all this conspiracy theory bullshit. The last of the legendary fighters, to me, ends with Floyd and Pacquiao right now. Canelo's still out there, and because his accomplishments and all that, I can see Canelo being on a pound-for-pound greats list, but I still say Marquez and Floyd and Pacquiao, and Pereira, and all these, Prince Nassim, Kevin Kelly, those guys like that. That era of fighters, those guys are already done. And they are older than Floyd and Manny. That's why I'm saying, to me, Floyd and Manny were the last two. I'm not saying there's no fighters from this era that's not going to be, you go down as greats and stuff like that. But I'm saying, and like I said, it's all subjective, man. It's all opinions, okay? Because there's guys, they got a top 50. I don't really have favorite fighters like that. But if I did, I'd rearrange a lot of the shit I see. So it's not like it's a right or wrong. It's just opinions. And you can't say, like I said, just because this guy beat him, he automatically beat him. No, it doesn't work that way. And it's all opinions. But I think that for guys like Tank Davis, Lopez, Ryan Garcia, what's hurting these guys is they got the skills, but it's who they're fighting. Teofimo, he beat Lomachenko, but he got more work to do. And Lomachenko, like I said, Lomachenko don't even have 20 fights yet. And Lomachenko is 34 now. So, regardless, and Lomachenko is a solid fighter, don't get me wrong. But when you break down a guy's resume, I tell people, do you know Floyd Mayweather has a combined 23 champion, like former champion, like he dethroned guys that was champs and guys that was former champs, 23 of them on his resume. You know how many guys have a whole fucking career, retired, and only fought 3 guys that was top guys? And they're like, oh, he's a great fighter because he fought. So, is what I'm saying. People got their opinions. I don't make opinions based on whether I like a fighter or not. That's not what it's based on with me. I look at what they actually did and brought to the table. So, guys like Ryan Garcia and all them, this division, that 135 division, Tank is at 140. Is he going to stay there? I don't know. But, however, when you beat guys that, okay, he was a top guy, but there's like 8 other guys better than this dude. So I'm gonna take the bottom of the top and fight those guys. My thing is this: if you're comfortable with that, then you're comfortable with it. What people enjoy is not based on what I'm saying. It's not based on what I see. It's based on what they see. So what I enjoy most, what I find myself listening to more music-wise or watching movie-wise, okay, then I guess that's the stuff I like the most. So it's the same thing with boxing. I watch all eras, but I find myself more intrigued by the 90s eras, and that's just real. And again, you got to break it down to different fighters to say what you think this guy would have did, wouldn't be able to do. It's not the whole era. So overall, the big scope, as far as I'm answered again in this video, this era of fighters right now, I don't see them being as skilled. Don't mean that they couldn't compete with them or even beat some of them. But overall skills, I think these guys are too busy trying to be flashy. And they're more concerned about being rock stars and boxers. They're more concerned about being popular on Instagram and social, other social media platforms than they are on their boxing. And that's why they like to get up and do 3 or 4 lives a day, super chats and all that, and just talk about who they're better than and who ain't this and who's not on their level. But it's like, where's the work at, though? You know what I'm saying? These guys are just getting light now, and they turn 30 years old, 31 years old. Then people are starting to just get to know them. It's happened with other fighters, because Bernard Hopkins was 37, and when he fought Trinidad, like I said, and that was his coming to the light fight. Him and Roy Jones was on the come up when they fought. They both was in their primes physically. But that fight did not boost either one of them like anything special. It was just another fight. They both were solid fighters. And understand, like I said, there was many fighters back in the day that was considered great that was never even champions. So you can't sit and praise one person or a certain era of people because other people are saying it. But like I said, there's several fighters who people like, oh, this guy, this and this and that. But then I didn't see him that way. I mean, I seen a lot of flaws in Ray Robinson, as great as he was. No, not Ray Robinson. No, you might not see. I give you something that Ray Robinson used to do that if a fighter did this right now, people would be like, what is he doing? Ray Robinson used to lean on his front foot, hand down, face out, flicking his jab. Literally, with his back foot in the air. That's on my mama. I used to sit there and be flicking his jab out, dancing around with his leg up, hand down. He just never had anybody make him pay for that shit. There's several things he did. You know how Ray Robinson used to get in and he was digging shots to the body? You know how he would do that little side step around you and then come around? And remember how he used to throw it? He used to drop his lead hand wide open, exposed, but nobody made him pay for it. See, there's always something you can see in a fighter. The point what I'm saying is, his flaws, if fighters right now have the same flaws, they'll point them out and completely overlook that Ray Robinson had them same flaws as well. So there's no such thing as, a perfect fighter. Just because Burnt Sugar is to sit there with his cigars, Ray Robinson was incredibly, this guy wasn't human. Ray Robinson could throw 5, 6, 7 punches in 2 seconds. This guy he hit like a mule. Yeah. They're trying to sell you, an autobiography or a documentary with it. They're part of it. Yeah, they're trying to build this thing up to make it, get eyes, get views. Of course. All these guys, that's what they do. They build guys up. Like I said in the last video, people never seen Bruce Lee have a fight before. He wasn't a professional fighter, but they'll tell you Bruce Lee could beat anybody. He was too fast for Ali. He'd have killed Ali. He'd have knocked Mike Tyson out. He's too strong, too fast. They wouldn't have been able to hit him. So when I say, what was Bruce Lee's professional fight record? They look stupid because you're comparing an actor to professional fighters. And you're saying that Bruce Lee, even in a boxing match, would have beat these guys. Bruce Lee was 132 pounds. Bruce hit a guy and knocked the guy like 20 feet across the room, and people saw it, and yada yada. I know Joe Louis hit a 500-pound barrel of hay with a 6-inch punch and made it move. Yeah, I know. Made the earth shake and all this bullshit. Right, but he still lost the guys in the ring. So hitting a fucking 500-pound barrel of hay, what does that mean? See, these stories, these legends, a lot of people are naive to reality. Let's just be real. And so what I'm saying, and I'm not never telling people, oh, Bruce Lee couldn't have a fight and win, but against who? You can't fucking sit here and tell me what somebody can do, and they never had a fucking professional fight career at all. They, I mean, never actually. Oh, but he had fights, yes, unsanctioned street type fights that people spoke about. You can't find one sparring match online about Bruce Lee. The most Bruce Lee did, I'm talking full contact. I'm trying to knock you the fuck out. I ain't talking about no fucking point system. And if you see the fight with Bruce Lee, it's him and his opponent. They got on all black, face covers and everything. It's a point system. And you look at the comments. Yo, Bruce is so fat. Bruce could have kicked that guy 8 times just now. Oh my God, look at Bruce. I'm watching the same thing. I'm not overwhelmed like these people. Oh my God, yeah. You can see he had speed. You can see he had technique. He still was not a professional fighter. I think Michael Jai White, I've seen him spar. And I think Michael Jai White got skills. But Michael Jai White's not a professional fighter. Who the fuck did Michael Jai White fight? Now, he spars, to his credit, with different guys. So he does get there and do that with them. We have never seen Bruce Lee spar. So I'm speaking on fact over what you believe, what you want to believe. You can't say it's a fact that this guy would have did this and this because people say this or say that. Yeah, they always going to say certain things. So it's like, if somebody's put on a certain pedestal, nobody can compete with them. You have to see them lose to believe it. So does it really make sense to even pull up these guys' names to say this guy would have beat this guy and that guy? And that's part of what I mean about back in the days. If you ask an older person that, they're going to tell, oh, no, the 70's, oh, the 60's, whatever era they're from, they're going to say that era would have destroyed this era. But I do agree that this era of fighters can't compete. In terms of, not that they can't compete with them, but in terms of skill level and what they bring, nah, I see a lot of flaws. To where these guys, it's not that it's flaws, it's that they don't practice, they abandon basic fundamentals. So without those basic fundamentals, and the fight starts to get tough, those little things that they don't know how to do, double, triple jabs, head movement, move your head when you jab, sidestep with the jab. You understand what I'm saying? When you shoot your shot, how you know the check left hooks, check right hooks, depending on your southpaw or orthodox fighter, whatever. All little things that you just don't see them do. Those things add up when the fights get tough. It's always when the fight is easy. You don't even have to dig into that bag. But when you get somebody who know all these tricks of the trade, you see what happens. I mean, Bernard Hopkins was considered a boring fighter, but if you watch Bernard knew a lot of tricks of the trade, man. He was a very skilled fighter who knew how to do things to win fights. So, yeah, my brother, I'm about to bring this video to a close. People, stay safe, like I always say. These numbers in COVID is rising, and a lot of people are still getting sick from this shit, man, and it's annoying, man. You know, people have been vaccinated, and you got people saying they were vaccinated, and you don't even know that, so just stay safe, but yeah. I think that this generation got a lot more work to do to play catch up, to get their game right. Not so they can compete with the 80s, 90s, and 70s. That had nothing to do with it. This is their time now. But to get on board where they are boxing and showing skills, because you got to understand, our generation is just getting older. So when we're gone, the guys now that's 20-something years old, and these little kids coming up, following them, that's going to be the guys that they look at and see. They're not thinking about Mike Tyson or Ali or Ray Robinson or Jack Johnson. They don't care about that. They're just looking at who was right before them. And so that becomes, this is what they're doing. Oh, you don't need a jab. You don't need the head feint and do all that shit. All you got to do is, no. There was a time when fighters just stood there and bang, 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 bang. No skill, just banging. So, it is what it is. So, I hope I answered your question. Well, I'm sure I did. Several times. Never fall in love with lies. Remember, the truth brings hate out of people, and I will catch y'all in the next video.